It felt like someone turned a faucet on and finally allowed this like inner artist to come out that had always been there. There's so many ways that I changed, like we all do, since becoming a mom. And the way that it affected my creativity was interesting, because on the one hand, it made me much more protective of my former self, my non-mother self, my creative artist self. And on the other hand, it blended in this beautiful way where it was like so integrated that I didn't even realize. And not just in how I wrote or what I wrote about, but just in the way of a maturity in the songwriting and a feeling like I know who I am, I can make my own decisions, I don't have to look so much around the room for approval in a session, for instance. I think as a mother, we really learn to trust our own guts. For instance, you know, the girls would need me, and my husband needs me, and you know, my business needs me, and at the same time, I need me. Like my little inner artist needs me and needs my attention. And if I wasn't paying attention or giving her room to play and create, I would suffer. And it wasn't until I kind of started to learn to put up boundaries around like, no, mom's in the studio, I have a job just like daddy has a job. When my door is closed, it doesn't mean that people can come in. It means that I'm creating, and it was hard to learn that. I'm still learning it. My kids are young. I was protective of both my time and then also the freedom I needed to express myself and create, and knowing that as an artist and a songwriter, it's not a normal job. You don't know when inspiration's gonna come. And what can look like not working is actually the work of being fed and filling up your well. So in that way too, I learned to be protective over like the wandering, aimless, like seemingly from the outside, she has nothing going on. What I knew, no, those long moments and years of like kind of sitting still in a way, looking at flowers, sitting outside, reading poems, reading books, that is the stuff that fills me up so that when the burst of creativity comes, that's where it comes from. It's so interesting. They're not really about love in the sense that it's not a romantic love that I'm singing to. A lot of the album and the songs that I'm going to be releasing first, Mercy, and that I released already, Girls, those are, Girls is obviously for my daughters, but Mercy is to myself. Yeah, a lot of them to my inner child, to learning how I'm healing, to protecting her, to nurturing her, to allowing her to express herself. They're not often outward directed, even though they might sound it. It's easier, I think, in writing a song to make it sound like it's about someone else, but I take my inspiration really from what I've been going through, what I've learned, and the journey that I've been on through some of the lowest lows I've ever seen. I'm so proud of the songs that I've written. I really am. I'm just incredibly proud of the album that I made, and they really feel like me. You know, in a way, when I came up, I was in New York City. This is 20 years ago. Not many people actually know this part of my story, because when Fight Song came out, it was almost like, where'd she come from? But what they don't know is that for 15 years, 14 years before that, I was touring in a van. I was writing songs daily. I was building a fan base one by one. I was playing in clubs in New York City from 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. because that's the only slots I could get. And I really paid my dues, and I've been basically writing this album for the last 20 years. And this album is the album that I would have made had I had the skills to write the songs that I've written now, back then. In the way that I produced it, in the way that it's often off the grid, meaning it's not really, there's no metronome, there's no auto-tune, it's the band and I playing and feeling each other in the room, and it's how I used to play coming up in New York City, because that's the only way you can. There was no tracks or anything back then, and like, I certainly didn't have the money to be in a studio where I had that back in the day. I think that songwriting's matured in that it's both a return to like my roots, and then also it's all this skill that I've acquired over the last 20 years of writing and being in this industry that has allowed me to really express myself in a way that I've always dreamed of. I've tried to explain to people like it's kind of the hero's journey. It's the feeling like there's something more for you that's calling you, and then it's the leaving home and the searching, and then the ultimate defeat and falling to your knees and battling with your demons, with whatever you call God, and with just raging against what is, which is the human condition, and then ultimately realizing the raging isn't gonna help, the surrender is what you need. So it's the softening, and then after the softening and giving it all up, you find the light again, and you find joy, and you return home like wiser, more mature, having seen it. And that's the story, then the journey that the album goes on. So you're absolutely right. There's no way I could have written that in my 20s. Like I didn't know any of that. And I'm so blown away by the way that I was able to transmute the experiences I was going through into the music, into the writing, almost effortlessly, because the songs were coming quickly and like they needed to be told. If you look at the credits, which you haven't had a chance to, there are a select few that I really trusted. I did it in a very different way than I did my last album, Waves. My first album, Fight Song, Stand By You, was actually my second album. The first album before that was one that I wrote almost all by myself. And I haven't gotten a chance to do that in a long time. So this, and again, was a little bit of a return to that with this like wiser way of looking at it, where I would be at my piano or on the guitar or crying in my bedroom, and the initial song idea would come to me, and I'd flesh it out really on my own, get the words, get the idea, get the feeling, and then only after it was really solid in my heart and in my brain would I bring it to other people. And they were very trusted collaborators. Like I could not just go into a random session. I think there was only one song on this album that was a session the day of that I met the people. And it's a beautiful song on the album, but it's not one of the ones that you hear that is the most deep. It's called Need You, and it's a love song to my husband. But there's nothing that deep about that emotion. It's just saying, I'm sorry if I don't tell you how much I need you all the time. But the ones that were like heart-wrenching that you're hearing, that you're like, my goodness, those were me on my own. And I think that you're right. Collaborators could not have gotten that out of me. Yeah, that one was hard. I mean, that was the opposite of Mercy. Mercy I wrote 100% by myself. And, a Fight Song I wrote almost all by myself. I have almost all the publishing because my collaborator was there the first day, and he was lovely, and he helped me get out the initial angst and feeling. But then it took me 2 years after that to toil and work through verse after verse and fill up notebook after notebook of what those lyrics would ultimately become. And this process was the same. There were some songs that I wrestled with that I don't have them accessible, but I have stacks of journals, and I just actually put something up on Instagram of to show a little bit behind the curtain of how my process is, because it's laborious. Some of the songs do not come easily to me. I work for them, and I think that's always been the thing that separates me from my peers, is not that I was more talented in my 20s or that I was in any way luckier. I just worked, and I never gave up. So this album has the same. There's the work ethic, and then there's also the times when it just flowed and it just came like a gift from the sky. Mercy was like that. Jack Antonoff had started that song, and it was called Standing Right Next to You, and he had started it with Joy Williams, who's a close friend of mine now. It was not fully formed. It was a little bit messy. There was no real climax of the hook. There was no verses and no bridge, and my publisher gave it to me. This is after Fight Song was already out, and said, do you like this song start? Because if you do, you can go back into the studio with Jack and rewrite it. So that's why there's multiple writers. So it was really just Jack and I in the studio that day, crafting I'm Gonna Stand By You. The other writers on there came in because they added some production stuff, and that was where the songwriting battle, the publishing nightmare starts, when someone adds a drum sound and all of a sudden deserves credit. And I understand, because they're not being paid equitably and it's not fair, and the only way that they can get what they need to live on is to fight for that. But as a songwriter, it's a little confusing, because you look at the credits and it looks like there's 7 or 8 writers, and it's really, in my experience, was just Jack and I. But yeah. If you ask my mom, she would say when I was very little, I wrote this song called Shady's Waltz. It was to my dog Shady when I was, I guess, 6 or 7. And she took it very seriously, which is really cool of her. And I was taking piano lessons at the time, classical lessons, and she had the piano teacher write it out on music paper, and we framed it, and she took it seriously. But for some reason, that was it. It was so maybe I could write, but I didn't explore it. I didn't come from a family of musicians or artists. I was in Boston. It wasn't a very or rather Newton, Massachusetts. So it wasn't like we knew a lot of people who were doing that professionally. So it wasn't until I was, I think 16 or 17, I started listening to a lot of Tori Amos and trying to recreate like what I was hearing, and inspired me to want to play and sing at the same time. From there, I went abroad in college to Trinidad. And when I was in Trinidad, I was interning at a record label's office and realized that I had this hunger to write about my experience and what I was feeling there. And then they kind of just exploded out of me like poems. But really up until that point, until I was 19, I hadn't done or written anything until like since that song when I was 7. Yeah.
So it's in you, just waiting
Yeah.
to burst out.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It felt like someone turned a faucet on and finally allowed this like inner artist to come out that had always been there. Gosh, they were really heavy songs. Like, I mean, as you can hear from the album, I'm deep. Like I have feel feelings deeply, like most artists, like most writers. I feel extreme highs and extreme lows. But these songs were not your average like teenage heartbreak. Oh, there was songs about a boyfriend that was mean to me, but like it wasn't just that. I was in Trinidad feeling very alone and isolated and confused about, you know, just what it was like to experience racism on the other way of like, and just the compassion in my heart, the way that my heart expanded and understood for the first time the way the world works and how unfair it was. And I was writing about that, about social justice. I was studying to be a diplomat. I really, in my mind, I was an international relations major, and I wanted to unite the world and connect. So those two kind of came together. I was writing about social justice and like the problem of globalization and how messed up it was that we had colonized the Caribbean and like just these ridiculous things that I had no business writing about, but felt deeply in my 19-year-old soul that I needed to make a change in the world somehow. Those were assigned projects. That was what I was doing to live. Okay. Was these syncs, these like assignments. And it was me flexing my songwriting skills. It was me honing my craft. My publisher, Sony, had these songwriting camps in the summer. And when you give me like, one of the hardest things about the music industry and trying to make it as an artist is there's no path, there's no like one thing, there's no checklist you can do to get there. But if someone gives me an assignment, oh my God, I will go all out and do it. So, you know, the assignment was write songs about these universal feelings that can fit into TV shows. And I attended those camps and took them very seriously, and I got a lot of syncs from them. So that Finding Carter one, I think it was called You're Safe. Yeah, I never released these, but I listened back and they're beautiful and there's depth to them.
They're on YouTube.
Yeah, they are on YouTube. I think you're right, that's right.
I've listened.
You're right. It was fun. It felt like play. You know, it's when someone tells you what to write about and how it needs to be, it's like a little bit of guidelines and boundaries in an area that is completely boundaryless when you're by yourself and just trying to create your own artist project. It was fun. It felt like there was structure and like rules, and I'm good at that. I try to be as disciplined as I can. It's something that I've learned over, you know, the long time in this industry, the long time of being a songwriter, that I can't only rely on inspiration to hit. I actually had to learn to write a song a day in order to hone the craft, and like maybe inspiration wasn't flowing, but that's part of the discipline and the work ethic. During this album cycle, it wasn't like anyone was counting on me to put another album out. Like, I'm good. I made a song that sold 8 million copies and another one that sold 3 million. I'm fine. But my artist inside has so much more to say. So even though there's no pressure on the outside for me to like do more, I needed to do more. With that being said, I didn't need to follow some structure or some manager telling me how to do it or when to do it. I was able to, over the past 3 years, really just let it come when it came. But I've only had the privilege to do that after having the work ethic of 5 sessions a week for years and learning the real LA like school or Nashville school of writing songs. Oh my gosh, yes, it's so frustrating when they come in a dream and like you just fight the tired because you're laying there and you're like, that's so good. And you're like, and I don't have it in me to get up and go find my phone and record this. This sucks. I really need one of those next to my bed. I've heard that, who was it? Maybe it wasn't, I forget. There was some amazing story about John Lennon, Paul McCartney, someone had it. No, who? Satisfaction, that he like got that in the middle of the night and rolled over and was like. But anyway, I'm the same way. They come in dreams. They come when I'm in the bath. They often come when my left brain is being quiet, right? When I'm not in like the analytic perfectionist, which I can be hard on myself. Not when I'm not in that mode. When I'm in like just playing or running or walking or like looking at flowers or on a hike, often ideas originate then. It's rare, but it happens that like when I'm in here with a set time that my favorite songs will come, although they have. But I think that it's more from outside inspiration. So I was putting in the hours and the time. I moved to LA. I found a manager that told me that the like endless touring that I was doing for these indie, audiences, and like the way that I was doing it, selling CDs out of the back of my car and trying to build a grassroots fan base like that. He came in and he said, that's not gonna get you where you wanna go. If what you want is to sell out arenas and stadiums. Move to LA, learn how to really write a pop song. And the way you do that is to really go into like the LA Songwriting School, which is 5 sessions a week with random people every day, and figure out the craft and like really treat it like a craft and like hard work. And once you do that, you'll have the structure, the guidelines, the understanding of how a pop song works, so that when inspiration hits and when it's the real emotion, it will have the form, like you'll have the skills to get it out. So I think that's what happened with Fight Song, first of all, was I was, like you said, I think you said it beautifully actually, I was struggling to be heard. I was desperate to be taken seriously. I wanted the respect of my peers, but also the respect of myself. I wanted to understand that I'm not an imposter, that I'm, just because I'm from Boston and like not, don't know this artist world, it's that I'm here, I belong here. And Fight Song was 15 years in the making of all of that struggle. There were so many songs before that were saying similar things that just didn't make it, they weren't good enough. So Fight Song was probably the 100th one written with that feeling of like, God, just please listen this time. Like I can do this. And it was also this, I was imploring myself to like keep going. And, I was 30 at the time when I wrote it. It didn't come out until I was 33, but a lot of people had moved on. A lot of artists that I was coming up with had moved on if they didn't make it by then. And I was close to giving up too, but there's this feeling in my heart that I still have today that I'm a fighter through and through. I really am. I just don't give up. If you back me into a corner, I might be down, but I will not stay down. I will box my way out. I will find a way back up. And you can never bet against me, because my own work ethic and my own drive and my own earned skill and determination and like the talent that was there initially, but the one that I fostered for 20 years, like you can't really bet against that. When someone can outwork you, right? I'm never gonna give up. And so that's what Fight Song was about me just saying like, count me out all you want. I don't care. I have more in me. I'm gonna go more rounds. And it wasn't like it immediately connected with people. It took, like I said, 2 more years of writing it, rewriting it. The co-writer I wrote it with that day, Dave Bassett, he was wonderful and he was very nurturing of my art and my feelings that day. But after that, I didn't talk to him about the song anymore. I took it on my own and tried version after version and met with different artists and producers, and yeah. When I heard Mercy, for instance, it came through in like 15 or 20 minutes because I was in such a state of like desperate for music to save my life again. And I knew immediately what I had. I knew immediately that I had like, hit that songwriting lottery. And with Fight Song, I just didn't know it yet. It just wasn't there. I could feel that.
How did you know it when it was?
Truthfully, at the time, I had a manager who had a very discerning ear, and it was really hard on me. I have since internalized the way that he talked to me, and now I am hard on myself in that way. But at the time, I didn't have anyone, I was writing songs in New York, and I'd like write them, and then I'd go and play them right that day. So I wasn't sitting there judging my work like it's not good enough yet, but he was, and he was very hard on me. And I think he and my publisher, I would send them version after version after version, and I was still looking outside of myself at that time for like, is this good enough yet? And I did trust him, and I trusted my producer too. And he just wouldn't give me the go ahead. And so it was a lot, I have to credit him, it was a lot of his editing and his ear and his ability to know when it was ready, and my utter exhaustion and being like, I cannot make another version of the song. I cannot rewrite these lyrics anymore. But then finding the will to. I have no idea.
No?
I literally don't know.
No.
I really don't know. I think maybe one of her staffers heard it, maybe Chelsea, someone. I mean, it was number 1.
Yeah.
It wasn't like she discovered it.
Right.
Nor did Taylor Swift, for that matter. just to clear it up. Everyone was like, oh, Taylor and Hillary made that song. I mean, the song was already number 1, but on iTunes. But like Hillary, I don't know. I mean, it was a big hit song, and she must have been hearing it on the radio, and maybe someone connected that to her message, and yeah. I'm so excited to be getting back out there and playing live. Part of my career is to be in my studio and filling up and creating, and then the other half of my career is facing outwards and sharing and connecting with an audience. And I haven't gotten to do it in a while, so this is me dipping my toe back into the water and in cities that I've toured for a long time, going back to my audiences, and showing them what I've done and showing them who I am now and how I've grown and how I've matured and this new sound and this new feeling from me, and sharing it a little bit at a time, and really just seeing what touring feels like for me now as a mother of 2 and as an artist with a body of work that I've never been more proud of. So yeah, it's starting soon. I can't wait. I am inspired and excited to be back out on the road after so long.
Part of where we started this conversation, we talked about your girls. The one thing you didn't say that I was thinking, and I didn't want to interrupt you, is your role modeling for them.
Yeah.
And what a great lesson for them to see a wonderfully engaged, involved, strong, creative mother.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Nothing touches me as much as when people talk about my mothering, because it's the one area that I doubt sometimes. So thank you.
Oh,
Not the one area, by the way.
no.
I doubt a lot of areas.
I understand, I know. But if you are concerned about sharing your time, because I know this as a mother, it's wonderful for them to see it.
Thank you so much.
Absorb it.
I think that's true. I'm starting to see, and it's still hard when they're young and they don't quite understand it, but I'm believing, I'm having faith that me following my dreams and showing them this example will ultimately make up for the times when now my 4-year-old will come to me sometimes and say, Mommy, you're not like other mommies. Why aren't you like other mommies who are home and like doing, and I have to hold her and acknowledge her feelings like us parents right now have learned to do, and say, you're allowed to feel sad about that, and one day I think you're gonna feel really excited about the kind of mommy I am, because we're gonna tour the world together, and you're gonna come on stage, and you're gonna see an example of a woman going after what she wants most and not letting anything stop her. And I hope that you know, my girls, that one day you can do the same. I pray that they will feel that way about me when they're older. My friend Amanda is Donna Summer's daughter, Amanda Ramirez, and she helped me on Sophie's first birthday. I had to go do a gig. I'm the breadwinner for the family, and at that time I wasn't working that much, and this was an amount that I couldn't turn down. And I left halfway through the day, and I was heartbroken, and I felt terrible guilt, and I was beating myself up like any mom would. And I know that some mothers will judge me for leaving on a birthday or not bringing her, but I promise you, I thought through every possibility, and this is the only way it could work. So hold off the judgment. But I called my friend Amanda on the way to the airport, and I called her crying, and she said to me, I don't know why, we weren't even that close yet, but I knew to call her. And she said, Rachel, my mother would travel the world. She missed things all the time. Do you know how proud I am to be her daughter? Do you know how incredible it was to be her daughter and receive those postcards and get those gifts and know that she was thinking of me and know she was on adventures? And hearing from an adult who was amazing, who was raised by a mother that was a touring musician, it really comforted me and gave me hope that, like, okay, one day they're gonna feel the same. So.
And they will also understand that they too need to do something that makes them happy.
Yes, you're right. That they can't ignore that inner fire. They have to nurture it and stoke it, and
no matter what it is.
No matter what it is.
That's what I taught my children.
That's cool, Robin. Yeah, and you need to be brave. And you need to not turn away from your fear.
That's right.
You need to lean into it.
That's right.
Yeah. We wrestled with which song to really launch the album campaign with. And Girls was a little bit of an aside. It came out on Mother's Day, and it was really just me, again, tentatively putting myself out there. I almost knew that a song to my daughters put out on Mother's Day, I could not be criticized for. And I think I was a little scared and insecure and afraid. But since then, I've really found my power again, and I feel brave. And so we chose Mercy, which is quite a statement and quite different from anything you've heard from me before, and very powerful. And I'm really excited to stand behind it and sing it and own that pain and own the way that wrestling your demons can turn into the most incredible art.